So, welcome to our Saturday morning session. Uh, we are talking on the ancient Indian heritage. We talked about several issues. We talked about Sanskrit, we talked about mathematics, we talked about astrology, and today we will talk about human health, or to be more specific, Ayurveda and Yoga. You see, health is the most important aspect of human life. In Rajasthani, we say, Pehlo Sukh Nirogi Kaya. If the health is not good, you cannot do anything. You can't sleep properly, you can't do your work properly, you can't even talk to others in a proper manner. So, health is the first requirement of every human being, and that requirement, if fulfilled properly, that enables you to do everything else. So everything else depends on good health, or you can say reasonably good health. Now, this is one contribution of ancient India, which is very, very profound, and I would say very deeply rooted. Now, if you look at the word swasth, swasth is the Sanskrit term for health. I have not seen any definition which defines it better than Susruta. Susruta, actually, the verse number 41 of chapter 15 defines swasth in a very fantastic way. In fact, the World Health Organization has borrowed partly from that now. But their definition is still incomplete, and the definition in Susruta is absolutely perfect. So I'll read it out in English. He is healthy whose doshaj, agnij, and functions of dhatus and malaj are in a state of equilibrium. We will talk about each of these words. Doshaj, agnij, dhatus, and malaj are in the state of equilibrium, and whose mind, senses, and soul are in an optimum state of well-being. This is the definition given in a writing which is dated almost 4,000 years back in time. Susruta Samahita, verse number 41, chapter 15. Now, human health is a natural concern for everybody, because without health, one cannot work properly. And swasth, swa means swayam, the self, and st means to be established, sthit. Swame sthit, the person who is established in himself, that he is not distracted by the rest of the world, that is swasth. That is actually the what you call most holistic explanation of swasth, to be established in one's own self. But in terms of interpretation for our daily life, I think this definition, I'll read it once again. He is healthy whose doshaj, agnij, and functions of dhatus and malaj are in the state of equilibrium, and whose mind, senses, and soul are in an optimum state of well-being. Now, we will discuss each one of these words, but let us first also go into some more facts which have been narrated in our ancient writings. Now, Susruta Samahita talks about 500 muscles, 900 ligaments in the body, 300 bones, 210 joints, 107 what we call marmas, that is vital points in the body. And they talk about 720 energy channels, nadij. So these are some of the facts mentioned in these ancient writings of India. Then, if you look at chapter 15 of Garud Puran. Garud Puran is, of course, when somebody dies, you listen to Garud Puran, and you find a lot of horrifying things there. But chapter 15 and 16 of Garud Puran are fantastic. The chapter 15 gives you detailed analysis of human biology. They even talk about how many hairs are there on a normal human body and how the body functions. So those very precise details are amazing in those writings of ancient time. Now we will talk about a little bit about Ayurveda, because I'm not a Ayurvedic Vedya or a scientist, but we will just talk of some fundamental facts about it, because that is very important to understand the human health. Now we all know that the human body is made of 5 great elements, that is 5 Panch Tattva. That these Panch Tattvas go back to nature once we die. That is what we always say. कि शरीर 5 तत्वों से बना है और उन तत्वों में इनका विसर्जन हो जाता है मृत्यु के बाद. So we go back to those 5 elements. We know what these 5 elements are. That is the space, air, fire, water, and earth. Now these 5 elements constitute physical body, because the food we eat is actually made of these 5 elements. Whether you eat roti, or whether you eat non-vegetarian, or whether you eat dal, vegetables, or fruit, ultimately these 5 elements come from that food into our body. For example, you take a apple tree. Now apple tree grows in a space, so you need some space to grow it. Then it requires water to ferment the seed, so the water is needed. It has to be sown in the earth, so the earth is needed. So you need space, you need earth, you need water, you need sunlight, and you need air to have what we call photosynthesis process. And then the fruit comes. So the fruit has those elements, and when we eat the fruit, all those 5 elements go into our body. Similarly, whatever we eat in our body, that is replenishing those 5 elements. And approximately 70% of the body is water. As is the case, 70% of earth is covered with water practically. That is the same ratio practically for human being. Now these 5 elements, when they combine together, then there are certain processes. That is what we call chemistry and metallurgy. These are the 2 sciences we talk about these days. But in the olden days, we used to call them Rasayan Shastra and Dhatu Shastra. So that is why these words come, Dhatu and Rasayan. These words come in the process. And what actually makes that process happen is Agni. Agni is the one which, when you eat your food, the food is digested with the help of Saman Pran. Saman Pran is actually a sort of fire which breaks the food into different elements. The rasas are separated, then the rasas are converted into blood. The blood is then converted into flesh. Flesh is converted into bones. Then it is converted into majja, the things which are in the joints. Then finally it is converted into semen, the sukra. So this is how the food breaks into the body, and that breaking happens with the help of Agnij. And we call it Jatra Agni normally. People, when you don't have a good digestive system, Vedya will say that your Agnij are not in good state. You need to reignite your Agnij. So the food is actually digested with the help of Agnij, and that is why they talk about that he is healthy whose doshas, Agnij, and functions of Dhatu and Malaj are in the state of equilibrium. So we understood what is Agni, what is Dhatu. Dhatu is the process in which the food is broken into different elements. There are a lot of minerals inside the body, We talk about iron, we talk about magnesium, we talk about even silver, we talk about silver bhasma is one of the important elements of curing the human body. We talk about pearl, moti ki bhasma is also used for curing the human body. Similarly, the gold is also used. So there are a lot of dhatus, there are a lot of minerals inside the body, and those minerals are taken inside the body through the food we eat. And that is why when you go to a doctor, he will say, "Oh, you need iron," and he will prescribe you iron tablet. That basically means that the food which contains iron should go inside your body so that your iron intake improves. So that is what we call it dhatu. Then we should understand mala. Dhatus, basically the breaking the food, which is done with the help of Agnis, that is fire. The fire, as we discussed it before, it is the pranic energy which operates inside. The pranic energy comes from the sun. That is, again, sun is the fire. Actually, sun is the most potent symbol of fire. It is not fire, but it is the most potent symbol of fire. The fire can exist in the visible form, in non-visible form. Even in the atmosphere where we are, there is a fire. If there is a, what you call friction of the two bodies here, the fire will, you will be able to see the fire. So the fires help in digesting the food. The food is then broken into various elements, including the dhatus. And then the waste part, then everything is not digested into the body. Then some part is remaining. Approximately, they say 1/3 part of the food you eat is not absorbed by the body. And that is called mal, that is waste. That has to be thrown out of the body. The body has a very scientific process. Whatever cannot assimilate into the body has to be thrown out. That becomes a foreign element then. And the mala has to go out of the body, and that is what we call shauch, that is the process of cleaning the body. In the morning we go to the toilet, that is one process of cleaning the body. There are many processes. So the doshas actually arise because of the combination of these 5 great elements which constitute our body, which go into the body through the food and fruits and water, whatever we take inside the body. These 5 great elements go into the body. When there is a chemical reaction into these bodies, the 3 dosas arise. That is what we call 3 dosas. And dosas means basically the chemical reaction inside the body. And that reaction is divided into 3 principal parts in Ayurveda. So the Ayurveda goes to the root, how the body is constituted, how the food converts into the body, how Agnis operate, how dhatus are made inside the body, and then they explain you in detail the muscles and the ligaments and the bones and the joints and the sukra, which is reproductive force. All this is very, what you call scientifically explained in the process when Ayurveda explains you about the operations of the body. So this is a very profound science going back to the origin of human and then how the body functions and how we can be healthy. Now we come back to the 3 dosas. 3 dosas are very important because that is the one which actually causes what we call body ailments. These are not necessarily, what you call not necessarily ailments, but these are the causes for ailments. 3 dosas will prevail, but imbalance of these dosas causes ailment. That is one part of ailment. The other part of ailment is associated with our mind and senses. That is different. So what we call it, the Ayurveda origin, modern science, modern people tell us that it originated 1500 BC or 2000 BC. Charak Samhita and Susrita Samhita, These are the two very ancient writings on Ayurveda, which actually give you a very profound knowledge of the uh, operations of the body, how the food gets converted into body, and how various you know organs of the body work inside. Now, if you go into the uh, dosage, we have to understand them a little bit in detail. The first, the dosas are called Vat, Pitta, and Kapha. Vat is basically air. Pitta is basically what you call, amla or Pitta. How do you call it in English? It's basically the chemical reaction inside the body when you feel. Sometimes you feel, khattapan in your throat. Now that is coming out of Pitta.
This acid reflux.
You can call it acidity, but not really acidity.
Acid reflux.
Acidity is reflection of it. But
It's a
Pitta is
fire.
basically, you can call it the chemical reaction inside the body.
It's the heating element of fire related.
Yeah, we can call it chemical reaction in the body. Bath is the air and Kapha is associated more with water, but it's a stabilizing element. So let's understand each one of them and their impact. Now, Vat actually represents space and air. Air and space inside the body is represented by Vat. That is the first thing. It also represents what you call the circulatory system inside the body, because of the not entire circulatory system, but the circulatory system associated with pranic energy or Vat, with the air. The breathing system which we operate, it's associated with Vat. You take the breathing inside, then the first breath, the Saman Pran, is digestive. Then you have Apan Pran, which is reproductive as well as disposal of waste. And then you have Vyan Pran, which is taking all the energy, circulation of energy inside the body. So all this pranic energy is associated with Vat. And so is the space, because there's the movement inside the body of Vat through various spaces. So that is the function of Vat to begin with, primary function of Vat. Then Pitta actually represents fire. Pitta is the chemical process which is ignited by fire inside the body. And Kapha actually represents water and earth. So this is how it operates. Now, Vat regulates the respiratory functions. Functions all relative to the movement, whatever movement we do. Like my hand is moving, my throat is moving, I'm able to speak. When you walk, when you do any movement that is associated with Vat. Then all the circulation of energy and nervous system. The nervous system operates on the basis of what you call pranic energy, and that circulation of the nervous system, circulatory system, circulation of energy itself, all that is based on Vat. And so is the disposal of waste, excretion and procreation, also the sexual activities. All these are associated with the movement of air. You can go to the toilet, if there's no proper movement of the air inside the body, you cannot, evacuate properly. So all these systems, let me repeat them: respiratory functions, body movements, circulation of energy, nervous system, disposal of waste, and procreation. These are the primary functions of Vat. The Vata creates these functions through various, chemical reactions inside the body. Then Pitta is the one which actually creates what you call different chemicals. I was told by certain scientists, and I also read somewhere, that inside the body your liver is actually creating thousands of different chemicals. And if you have to create those chemicals outside in the on the space, then I was told that it might take 5 square kilometers of space to create all those chemicals in a very minuscule scale. So this is the amount of work which is being done inside the body with pranic energy and the combination of the food. The pranic energy works on the food and then creates this kind of chemicals. So pitta regulates the digestive functions. They creates all the juices which are required to digest. For example, when we eat our food, the saliva is the one which takes the food first, and then it makes it palatable, it makes it more digestive, and then it goes inside. So even this juice of saliva, which is the first thing which comes out and the first thing which is associated with the food we eat, is the beginning of the digestive process. So this is the digestive process. Then it assimilates food with the body, and then 7 dhatus are formed. Now 7 dhatus have been described in Ayurveda, which we talked a little bit ago. That is, the first is ras, the juice. The second is rakt, the blood. The third one is mans, that is the flesh. Fourth is asti, that is the bone. Fifth is meda, that is the tissue, what you call, for example, in the joints you have certain tissues. So that is called meda. And then you have majja, bone marrow, and then you have semen, sukra. So these are the 7 dhatus which are actually the byproduct of the pitta process. When the food is acted upon by fire, or the fire acts upon the food, it breaks into 7 different dhatus, and these are the 7 dhatus which are created inside the body. These are the 7 principal segments which create our body. So this is, the pitta actually regulates our hunger, it regulates our thirst, it regulates softness, lust in the body. If some people have very beautiful lust on their face, some others don't have. All that, body heat, the body maintains a temperature, and without that temperature you cannot survive. So all these functions are regulated by pitta. So pitta is extremely important. It is the whole nutritional system inside, it is whole digestive system inside, which is actually controlled by pitta. And then the third one is called kapha. All the stability process. Kapha is basically combination of water and earth. Earth is a stabilizing factor, water is also operating with it at the same time. So all the lubrication of the joints is because of kapha. It stabilizes the skeleton of the body. The body skeleton, you see all those bone structure which remains in shape. It is stabilized by kapha, and then it provides strength to the muscles, to the bones, and helps in the what we call self-healing system, or the immunity system in the body, immune system. So all that is controlled by kapha. So these are the 3 dosas. These 3 dosas, they come out of the 5 great elements. And these 5 great elements create these 3 dosas. 3 dosas maintain our body structure, the body functioning, the energy inside, our nervous system, our thinking process. All that is maintained by these 3 dosas. And if there's an imbalance in the 3 dosas, then the problem arises. Then we start becoming ill, we start becoming sick. So this is how the Vedyas, the ancient health specialists, have explained the system of operation of our body in a very scientific way, starting from how the body actually generates in itself, starting from the sukra and the egg, from where the body starts in taking a shape, and then how it grows, and then how it continues to function, how the functions are maintained. All that has been explained in great detail in these writings of Susruta as well as Charak. There are some other writings as well, but Susruta and Charak are some of the most ancient writings which explain this entire system of our health, because the health is dependent on this process which we just understood, the process of 5 elements, 3 doshas, then converting into 7 dhatus, Agni in the process, disposal of malaj, and all that entire process which is operating. So this is what they explain. Now, there are various, what you call symptoms. That which element is not functioning properly in your body, which dosa is not functioning properly in your body. And those have been explained in great detail in Ayurveda. But I can tell you a few things basically, uh, just for general knowledge, just to understand that how deep the science is. Of course, the reading of those writings will explain you better. But in principle, I will explain you a few things. Now, for example, taking dry, cold, astringent food, the suppression of natural urges for example, urination or excretion, taking food without having hunger, you don't feel hungry, but you're taking food, doing excessive activities or exercises, eh, not taking proper sleep at night, speaking in a very, very loud voice, and doing too many exercises, it can aggravate your vat. These things. Taking very dry, cold, and astringent food, the suppression of natural urges for excretion, taking food without feeling hungry, doing excessive activities without proper sleep at night, speaking with a very loud voice, and doing excessive physical exercises, they can aggravate vat. These are the symptoms which will create, some sort of disturbance in your dosa related to vat. Then excessive intake of pungent and sour and salty food, alcoholic drinks with spicy food, that aggravates pitta. Pitta will be aggravated by intake of pungent, sour, and salty food, alcoholic drinks, and spicy food. Pitta is aggravated. Pitta is also aggravated by anger, fear, fatigue, excessive exposure to sun, hot air, dry vegetables, and irregular eating habits also contribute to some sort of disturbance in pitta. Similarly, the autumn season aggravates pitta also. When the autumn comes, pitta is aggravated. Now, cough is aggravated by an intake of heavy, oily, and sweet food. Heavy, oily, and sweet food. Sleeping during the day, eating cold fish, an excessive intake of sugar, and confectionery items may also cause aggravation of cough. So the cough is aggravated by these things. So we have to be careful in our eating habits, in our sleeping habits, in our thinking, even in our anger and fear and fatigue, to regulate these 3 dosas in a proper way. As we have, you know, Rajtam and Sat in the nature. Similarly, we have these three dosas in the body. These three dosas are aggravated because of variety of factors. Some of the factors I mentioned just now can aggravate these doshas inside the body, causing imbalance in our health, and then the health is disturbed. So the modern science go to the symptoms. For example, if you have blood pressure, they will just measure the blood and tell you how to regulate it. They will give you certain medications to regulate the blood pressure, but they don't go into the deep cause why the blood pressure is happening. And the causes lie in these three things, three dosage. Vat, Kapha, and Pitta, they are the cause of all ailments inside the body. And therefore, it is important that we regulate these three fundamental causes. So the diagnosis of the disease in Ayurveda is based on these the functioning of these three doshas. And if you have gone to an old physician Vaidya, you would find that he just puts his finger on your nabji, on your nadi, they call it nadi. They carefully read this nadi and they tell you what is the problem in your body. Because these nadis here, they are the what you call provide you complete analysis of the functioning inside the body. And those scientists, or we can call them ancient Vaidyas, they were able to read them properly and tell you what is missing. So basically, the imbalance in the three dosage is the cause of ill health, but it is also affected by our anger, by our anxiety, by, for example, speaking too loud, speaking in anger mode, uh, having jealousy inside, the having too much sentiment or emotional feelings. All that also affect these dosage, and these dosage have to be regulated properly if we want to be healthy in life. So this is a short analysis of Ayurvedic uh, fundamental principles of Ayurveda to regulate human health. Now I will also go briefly in the yoga today, the process of yoga, how they regulate human life. You know, we understand yoga is actually a very profound word, and that means that it starts from a Sanskrit root called yuj, that is, you unite, the individual unit unites with the existence. The unity of the Almighty with the single soul is called yog. That like a river goes and unites with the ocean, it's called yog. So similarly, a single soul unites with the Paramatma, the Atma unites with Paramatma, it is called Yog. But that is a very large and profound meaning. So we are not going into that meaning in terms of, because that is the whole philosophy of life. But Bhakti Yoga understood today is three things. That is, one is called asana, second is called meditation, and third is called, certain habits which form in our body over time. So you can make it into three elements. That is the body habits. Second is the asanas. That is basically certain postures or exercises. And thirdly, the meditation process. So these are the three things which actually help in regulating our human health. The first is the habits. Habits are most destructive things, like in childhood, some people get to smoking. And now that habit was formed in innocence, nobody knew what the consequences were. The young child didn't know much about it. And after that, it becomes extremely difficult to get rid of it. And the people continue with that habit. I know a lot of people who eat gutkas these days, those tobacco chewing habit. And now they get addicted to that they just cannot get out of it. Now, for that, you really need an inner thinking, a very big resolution inside, iron will to get out of it. So that is part of yoga. Sankalp, that is part of yoga. So a lot of habits are formed in our childhood, knowingly or unknowingly, mostly unknowingly, or sometimes out of curiosity. And then it becomes extremely difficult to get rid of those habits. So that is very, very important to get rid of those habits. And that is possible through a resolution, through iron will, through sankalp. And at some stage, one has to do it to get out of those wrong habits. That is one. Secondly, the body postures. Now, body postures are very important. Like I do some of the asanas. Why they are important? They are important firstly because they maintain what we call the flexibility of our muscles and bones and the entire body structure. The body structure has to be flexible. There are a lot of people who cannot even sit on, in Padmasana, for example. They cannot sit on the ground because their body, they have lost the flexibility of their body. So the flexibility of body as you lose, it will become more susceptible to a variety of ailments. Some people cannot walk properly because they have lost flexibility in their legs, in their movement. So the yoga, the asanas, they enable you to keep that flexibility in your muscles, in your bones, in your entire body structure. The body skeleton is kept flexible by asanas. That is one part. The second part of asana is that when you do asana, you take a particular posture. You sit down or you lie down in that posture. In that process, the pranic energy goes to certain areas of the body where it normally does not reach. And therefore, a particular body posture enables you to take pranic energy to certain spaces inside your body where the energy is needed, but it normally does not reach. So it revitalizes what you call in modern terms, the cells in the body. The cells are revitalized through the asanas because the asanas enable the pranic energy to reach those spaces where it normally does not reach. So that is the second important aspect of asana. And third is, of course, it makes you exercise, and exercise means you spend your, fat. Your fat is reduced, your energy is reduced, and therefore you feel more relaxed, and you feel, you get a better sleep at night if you do asana regularly, because it regulates your pranic energy and it makes you feel a little tired, and therefore you have a good sleep at night. So these are the obvious advantages of asanas. And the third one is dhyan. We will discuss that separately in greater detail. But briefly, all the movement, the body is associated with movement. The world is also associated with movement. Everything changes here. There's a movement, continuous movement. That's why we call it Jagat. Gat means gati. All the time there's a gati, movement. Continuous gati in the world. And there's a continuous gati in our body and mind. So that gati keeps taking all our energy. And we are not able to store our energy. We are not able to preserve our energy properly. The preservation of energy or reduction in consumption of energy, or what we call Chittavrati Nirodh, as Patanjali says, that Chittavrati Nirodh is possible only when you get into meditative mode. When you do dhyan, then you are in control of your body and your mind. The movement of your mind, the movement of your body is under your control during that period. If you realize, if you do deep analysis, Rest of the time, your mind is controlling your body and your movement. You can sit down properly and think about it in the daytime, what activities you did and what propelled you to do those activities. You will realize that 99.9% activities you did, they were propelled by your mind and body. You did not propel your mind and body. So dhyan is one state in which you are able to propel your mind and body. You reverse the entire process, and then you become the driver, you become the controller, you become the supreme controller of your own being. So that is where the dhyan is important. So yoga and meditation, both in that sense, are extremely important for your good health, for the holistic health, and for bringing peace to your mind. Meditation is the one which ultimately brings total peace. Uh, After the meditation session, I'm sure you must be realizing that what a great peace I had during the last half an hour. I think that peace you cannot uh, experience without meditation. Nobody can experience that peace because you are all the time agitated by the world around you. Somebody is pulling, somebody is pushing, somebody is, you know, uh, taking in an X direction, somebody is taking in Y direction, and all these things are constantly happening. Outside forces, always as your mind, they both are operating and pulling and pushing you all the time. You are under constant pressure, and that pressure is completely thrown away. It is this process is completely done away with during that period of meditation, and that is why the meditation is extremely important for mental health, for body health, and for peace of mind. So I think I will end here basically to say that our ancient scientists and rishis, they invented these health sciences. These are great health sciences, Ayurveda and yoga both. They are very fundamental to human survival, and calling them as primitive is immaturity. Telling that those people who discovered what are the properties of a particular leaf or a particular root or a particular fruit or a particular flower is not scientific, is not maturity. If you have to analyze thousands of fruits, millions of leaves, millions of roots, millions of chals, that is the bark, and if you have to analyze millions of flowers, it cannot be unscientific. To discover their properties, to find out what is what, and to relate all that to the human health, and then also to mix. For example, you should take, in fact, our scientists have gone to a great extent that in this particular vegetable, you should use ajwain as in the chokan. In this, you should use jeera in the chokan. In this, you should use, dhania in chokan. All that has been based on certain scientific studies done by our ancestors. And today we are in the habit of calling it primitive in the name of so-called modernity or westernization. But I am firmly of the belief that the Ayurveda is the fundamental science of health. Yoga and Ayurveda, they are the most fundamental science of health. And all other sciences are either based on that or a sort of one small little branch of these two sciences. Even the allopathic science is based on the research done by Ayurveda. All the properties which Ayurveda defined of a particular fruit or a leaf or a flower or a particular animals, for example, extract of animal, all those were done by the Ayurvedic scientists. The allopathic scientists have refined them further, making them more potent so that they can become effective immediately. and which is not a good sign, because whatever cures you immediately, it means they are also leaving a lot of side effects inside the body. And whatever is more potent than needed, it also causes a lot of side effects. The food we eat becomes part of the body, but the chemicals cannot become part of the body. They are going to leave side effects inside the body. And that is what is happening with modern medication. So I don't want to go into the further details of that, but the fact is that these fundamental sciences were contributed by our ancient rishis to the world, to the knowledge bank of the world, and these are extremely foundational, extremely useful, and it is our duty that we bring them back in a scientific manner by explaining our children how they have come into being, and how by regulating our food, regulating our daily life, we can regulate our health properly. If you want, I can talk about regulating these things in one more session. I think that may be useful for everybody, but it depends on your interest. So thank you very much, and we will close our session of the talk, the first part of the session, with this presentation. Thank you.